Hi everybody, my name is Divya Alfred and this video is a part of my ETM assignment submission. Now this video is aimed at all you budding musicians who are still figuring out a lot about your own music instrument. Now the next thing that you learn after learning about the various parts of your instrument or learning about the very basics of music is something which is called as scales. Now I know that when I started learning the keyboard that I struggled with this part of music learning, and I kept wondering what is the point of learning these scales, or like how am I ever going to memorize this huge table of notes. And I'm sure that each of you would have received something like this from your instructors, and it is just a whole bunch of keys, and it seems like there is no relationship between any of this. Now, it was during one of these times that I came upon, or I heard people talking about a concept which is called as the circle of fifths. Now, and I kept wondering what this was all about. I mean, what is the circle of fifths? So, if you are familiar about it but don't know what it does or how it is used, well, wonder no more because this video is meant for you. Now, the circle of fifths is nothing but a chart, or rather, it's nothing but a circle which organizes all of the keys of our instruments into a system that we can then use to relate each of these notes to one another, or relate each of these keys to one another. Now, there are of course several versions of this which are available, but today what we're going to be dealing with is of course only with the major keys. Now, if you're wondering where this concept of circle of fifths came from, so let me just write that out in case you're still wondering. If you heard me right, that's right. It is called as the circle of fifths, and that's the number 5. And it refers to the number 5. So this is the circle of fifths that we're talking about. Now, this concept initially was started by someone called as Pythagoras. Now, we've all heard of Pythagoras in math, and now we're suddenly hearing about it in music. But like we know, math and music are actually pretty interrelated. You can go check that out if you're interested. Now, what happened was in the 6th century BC, Pythagoras had figured out how pitches work, and he had taken different strings of different length, and he had by vibrating each of these strings, he determined what is pitches, their frequencies, and he arranged each of these to form what we now call as an octave. Like you can see, this is the C octave, the 8 notes that are present. So he had defined what an octave was. So he figured out the next logical step was to create something which relates these various keys, and that is now what we call as the Pythagorean circle, which has now led to the term called as the circle of fifths. So now that's a little brief about the history. So what have we done so far? We have learned two things. One is how the circle of fifths originated, and next was what is the use of this circle of fifths. This was originated by Pythagoras and is called as the Pythagorean circle or the circle of fifths, and its use is to understand the relationship between the keys that are present within an octave, or also to define the key signature of a sheet, a music sheet, or like if somebody says that I am playing in the scale of A, to understand what are the various notes that are present, we make use of the circle of fifths. So let's proceed. Now the next thing that we're going to do is, you kept hearing me use the word circle, so that's exactly what we're going to do. Is we are first going to start by drawing a circle. Now this circle is nothing but a clock face. So let's start by drawing our clock. So here we have our 12 o'clock, then we have our 3 o'clock, our 6 o'clock, and our 9 o'clock. So this is my circle with a clock face that I have gone ahead and I have drawn. Then I am going to now get another color. Yeah, so now I'm going to draw my 1 o'clock, my 2 o'clock, then I have my 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, then I have 7, 8, and then I have 10 and 11. So this resembles my circle of clock. So this is my clock circle, and each of these lines represents a measure which we call as a tonic. So each of these lines represents a measure and we call it as tonic, and this is where we have derived the word from which we get the word diatonic. And then of course we talk about our chromatic scale. So if you have time, please do go ahead and look into this. We will not be explaining these words in this video, but do go ahead and look. But you don't need to know this to understand this right now. So let's look again into our scales. And the first key that we know, which we start with, which is the center key of our keyboard, is the key C. So what we're going to do now is we are going to write the letter C on our 12 o'clock face. So why don't I go ahead and do that? And I am going to write a big C over here. Okay, now this is called as the circle of fifths. So I am starting with my key C, and now I am going to go count 5 notes up. So in the scale, or in my scale of C, I know that the scale of C comprises of C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and C, and so on. So the fifth note from the key C would be C, D, E, F, and G. So my fifth note is the letter G. So I'm just going to go ahead and write that down. So 5 notes up from C is the letter G. Now I have got my G. So now let's move on to my scale G. Now let's look at G. Now the fifth note from G is A, B, C, and D. So the fifth note from G is D. So let me write D over here. Excuse me. Yeah, bad cold. So now let's go back to our key scale D. Now what's the fifth note in the scale of D is A. So the fifth note in the scale of D is A. So I'm going to go ahead and write A. Now next, again you got it right. Let's go down to A. What is the fifth note in the scale of A is E. So I'm going to write E over here. So the next scale in the scale of E, the fifth note is B. So I'm going to go ahead and write a B over here. Okay, so the fifth note from the scale of B is, so why don't we look that up? The fifth note in the scale of B is nothing but it is F sharp. Now we know F sharp is nothing but G flat as well. So I'm just going to stick to the sharp right now, and I'm going to write F sharp. Let's look at our F sharp scale. The fifth note in the scale of F sharp is C sharp. So let's go ahead. Fifth note over here is C sharp. Now let's look at our C sharp scale. In my C sharp scale, the fifth note is G sharp. So I'm going to write G sharp over here. Okay, now let's again go back to my G sharp scale. G sharp scale, the fifth note is E flat, or E flat is nothing but my D sharp. So you can write E flat or D sharp, both are the same. So now let's go to my E flat or my D sharp scale. The fifth note is B flat. B flat or A sharp. So I'm going to use sharp flats over here. So it's B flat. Let's go to my B flat scale or A sharp, and the fifth note is F. Excellent. So now what we have done is we've completed our circle of fifths. So these are my notes that are there in the circle of fifths. And now let's look back at what we have done so far. So what we did so far is we drew a circle of fifths by taking the fifth note on the scale of the note which is to the left of the note that we have taken. So for G, it is the fifth note from C. For D, it is the fifth note from G. For A, it is the fifth note from D. So we are referring to the scales over here. And right now we have taken only the major scales. We are not considering the minor scales at all. So let's move on. So now that I have drawn my circle of fifths, what's the big deal? I mean, what do I do with this? So that's also very important. And before we start that, it is very important for us to learn this acronym. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and write that a little bigger because I think it's become a little too small. So why don't I write that down? So we have F, C, G, D, A, E, B. Now it is important for you to be able to learn this. Okay, so there's some very interesting acronyms that have been come up. Some are like Father Charles goes down and ends battle, or Father Christmas gave Dad an electric blanket. It doesn't matter, you can come up with your own acronyms, but it is important to remember it. Okay, so now that we've got that, now let me tell you how we are going to use this acronym. Now let me just put that on the side and let me just take this section out. So here you have your F, C, G, D, A, E and B. Okay, what is the acronym? Anything Father Christmas gave Dad an electric blanket. So here is my F, C, G, D, A, E and B. Now as we know, C has no sharps and no flats. So our scale of C has no sharps and no flats. So let's look at it here again. See, our scale of C has no flats or any sharps. So let's move on to G. So when we move from here to G, we are going up by one measure, as you can see over here. See, we've gone up by one measure. So what this means is that the scale of G has one sharp. So let me write that down. So this means that the scale of G has one sharp. Okay, and how do we know that? So let's look at our scale of G. Our scale of G has one sharp, which is nothing but F sharp. So why don't I put that in brackets over here? It has one sharp and the sharp is F sharp. Do you think this feels a little familiar? Shall I just write down that acronym over here? Our acronym was Father Christmas gave Dad an electric blanket. Oh look, an F, and there's an F over here. So we have gone up one measure. There is one sharp in the scale of G, and that is F sharp. So let's move on. When we go from C to D, we are moving up two measures. So this is one measure and this is another measure. So let me write that down here. So when we go from C to D, we are moving up two measures. All right. So since we are moving up two measures, that means the scale of D has two sharps. Okay, so the scale of D has two sharps. So let's look at the scale of D right now. That's my scale of D. The scale of D has two sharps, F sharp and C sharp. So why don't I write that down? The scale of D has two sharps, F sharp and C sharp, which is nothing but, like the acronym shows, F, C. So what do you think about the scale of A? That's right, the scale of A will have three sharps. So I'll write that down. So the scale of A has three sharps. And what do you think those sharps are? Okay, I'm not going to show you the scale over here. So what do you think those sharps are? F sharp, C sharp and G sharp. So that's right, it is F sharp, C sharp and G sharp. So let's see if we got that right. It is, yeah, so that's it. C sharp, F sharp and G sharp. So why don't we try the next one? Let's now look at our scale of E. The scale of E is up by four measures. 1, 2, 3 and 4. So it goes up by four measures. That means it has four sharps. And what are those four sharps? Let's again look back into our acronym, which is over here. So it will be F sharp, C sharp, G sharp and D sharp. So the scale of E has four sharps, F sharp, C sharp, G sharp and D sharp. Okay, so let's just verify that over here. The scale of E has four sharps, F sharp, G sharp, C sharp and D sharp. So let's move on a little bit more. What about B? So how many sharps do you think B has? That's right, it has 5 sharps, and those 5 sharps would be, let's just look at it over here, F sharp, C sharp, G sharp, D sharp and A sharp. What about F sharp on its own, which is how many measures? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It is 6 measures up, so it is 6 sharps, which would be F sharp, C sharp, G sharp, D sharp, A sharp, and E sharp. Okay, what about C sharp? We know C sharp is 7 up, so that means it has 7 sharps. So the 7 sharps would be F sharp, C sharp, G sharp, D sharp, A sharp, E sharp, and B sharp, which is nothing but C again. So 7 sharp. So now we've completed this and we stop over here. So you would have noticed a trend that when we are going from in the clockwise direction, what we write is only the sharps. And the acronym that we use is Father Christmas gave Dad an electric blanket. But what about these notes that are here on the side? What do we do when we are going in the anti-clockwise direction? So let's go back to this one over here. Now when you are going, so let me write. So this, we go this way when we are writing sharps. Now when we go in the opposite direction, we use flats. Okay, so that means, just like this acronym says over here, battle ends and down goes Charles's father. So, or blanket exploded and Dad got charred feet. So when we're using flats, we go in the opposite order, and that is, we start by using B first. So we say B, E, let me write that out. So we start by using B, E, A, D, G, C, and F. So when we are going in flats, that means in the anti-clockwise direction, we go in this order, which is completely opposite to when we go using sharps. So let's now try and complete our circle of fifths. So let's write that again. So when we're going in the anti-clockwise direction, we are going down by 1 measure. So that means it will have only 1 of something and it will have only 1 flat. And what do you think that 1 flat is? Since we are going in this direction for flats, it will be B. So the key of F has 1 flat, which is nothing but B flat. We know B flat in the enharmonic scale would be, in enharmonic terms would be A sharp. So let's look at our F scale for now. So as you can see, F has G, A sharp, which is nothing but B flat, C, D, E, and F. Now as we go down, again let's go back down here. We have gone down by 2 measures. When we go down by 2 measures, that means there are 2 flats over here. What are the 2 flats? The 2 flats would be, so let's look at our acronym over here. It will be B flat and E flat. So it has 2 flats over here, B flat and E flat. Let's look at our scale of B flat. B flat we know is nothing but A sharp. So here I have it, B flat, A flat has 2 flats, which are E flat and B flat. So now what about E flat? Now E flat again, as we know, it will have, since we're going down by 3 measures. So let's go down. We're going down by 3 measures in the anti-clockwise direction. So we know when we're going in the anti-clockwise direction, we are going to be considering flats. So let me just go ahead and write that down. When we go in this direction, we are considering flats. And what is the acronym for flats? B, E, A, D, G, C, and F. And of course, for here, for sharps, it is F, C, G, D, A, E, B. So let's look again into our E flat. E flat is 3 measures down, so it has 3 flats. What are those 3 flats? 3 flats are B flat, E flat, and A flat. So let me see if I got that right. Let's look into our E flat. Oh, it's over here. It has 3 flats, A flat, B flat, and E flat. What about my G sharp? Now my G sharp has 4 flats. And what are those 4 flats? I'm sure you've got it by now. That's right, B flat, E flat, A flat, and D flat. Now what happens when we come over here? We continue. So that means it has 7 sharps and it has 5 flats. What are those 5 flats? So I'm just going to put that in small brackets and I'm going to write really small right now. So the 5 flats are B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, and G flat. What about this? 6, when I come down to my F sharp has 6 flats, and of course my B has 7 flats. So I'm not going to fill that up. I'm going to leave it for you to do. So let's look at what have we learned so far. So what we've learned so far is about the circle of fifths. In the circle of fifths, when we move in the clockwise direction, we consider only sharps, and when we move in the anti-clockwise direction, we are considering only the flats. By every measure that we move up, the number of sharps or the number of flats is always 1. When we move up by 2 measures, the number of sharps or the number of flats is 2. How do we know which all keys in this scale have sharps or flats? Is by using this acronym. When you're considering sharps, you can say father, Christmas gave dad an electric blanket. So that's how we got F, C, G, D, A, E, B. And when we're going in the anti-clockwise direction, this is again another acronym. Blanket exploded and dad got charred feet. So you know which all flats are present. So this is an easy way of remembering our scales and how every note is related to each other. Now in the coming videos, we will of course learn about what to do once we know the circle of fifths. Of course, with use, that's the only way. With use, as you just keep looking at this circle, you'll understand what all notes are there. And of course, now this makes more sense. Now we are able to understand how is it that we get these notes. How is it that each of these notes are related to each other. So thank you so much for listening, and go ahead and just make the circle of fifths to make and just stick it somewhere so that you just are constantly looking at it and you are able to remember and help yourselves rather whenever you play music. Thank you so much for listening.